Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Thanks for joining me in another episode of Keep It Real. So sorry about not having the typical scenic background that I usually have. I was actually about halfway into my hike and my phone died, which is how I do the video. So I had to hike back to my truck. So we're doing it from my truck today, which actually kind of works out because I've got some props today that it's probably a little bit easier in here than if I was out hiking. I have to show you these different props, and the props are kind of a little bit of education on label reading. And the labels that we're going to talk about today are from energy drinks. I'm asked quite a bit about energy drinks and what does the label mean? What are all these different ingredients? And most people probably have kind of an idea that most energy drinks are not healthy for them, but there's actually some that look like they're trying to make it seem like they're healthy, but I thought I'd just show you some labels and break it down for you and kind of give you the truth behind it. So one of them is Mountain Dew. This one is Mountain Dew Code Red, which I'll just read you a couple of the ingredients. Water is the first ingredient, and the second ingredient, just so you know how the order of ingredients on the label goes, they have to put the ones at the beginning of the list that have the greatest sort of contribution to the product, or the greatest amount of ingredient goes at the top of the list. So the first one is water, carbonated water. So we're okay there so far. But the second ingredient on the list is high fructose corn syrup. So that means there's a whole bunch of high fructose corn syrup. And we've had multiple episodes in the past where high fructose corn syrup has come up. And basically what you need to know is it's probably one of the worst products of human food manufacturing of all time, in my opinion. I'd say probably maybe at the top of the list would be hydrogenated fats, trans fats, which if you followed the news on that lately, it's pretty much getting eliminated from the food chain because everybody agrees that it's just awful. It contributes to heart disease. High fructose corn syrup is, I'm hoping, next on the chopping block. It's really, really awful. High fructose. Fructose is just not very easily metabolized by the liver. It turns into fat very, very quickly. It has a significant spike of carbohydrate and insulin in your body. It's one of the things that really contributes to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance puts you on the fast track to diabetes and heart disease. So there's really no upside at all to high fructose corn syrup. It's very cheap, and it's one of the ways that these products eliminate sugar, and they put high fructose corn syrup. And I don't know if they're trying to trick us or if they're just trying to save some money. High fructose corn syrup is extremely cheap, probably much, much cheaper even than sugar. And so it's something that they can put in there to make it taste sweet, and but unfortunately it brings all the adverse side effects. And so one bottle is considered a serving size, and that gives you 77 grams of sugar. You can see it right there. Hopefully you can see that. Anyhow, 77 grams of sugar in one of these bottles. And 77 grams of sugar is enough to start to suppress immune function. It definitely affects liver function. Like I said before, it changes our liver's ability to process glucose. And when glucose gets too high in the liver, it starts to convert it to triglycerides, which is fat in the blood. And that fat in the blood has to get stuck in a fat cell. So it's really contributing to obesity. And does that look like a color that exists in nature? No, it's not. So it's got red 40, it's got yellow 5, and blue 1. I mean, those are just food colorings that we can have a whole separate episode just on food coloring. So that's how you read that label, and that tells you really what's going on in there. Let's go next to Starbucks Double Shot. Coffee and protein. The reason why I wanted to pull this one out is because it claims to have 20 grams of protein, which I don't doubt actually. But what's the source of the protein? That really, really matters. First of all, it's got a bunch of sugar. It's got 21 grams of sugar, which is a pretty whopping dose of sugar. And what's the protein source? The protein source is reduced fat milk, skim milk, and milk protein concentrate, and sodium caseinate. And so these are probably the worst, cheapest forms of protein. This really shouldn't even be considered, a quality source of protein. Some people look at 20 grams and go, oh man, that's just like having a good, healthy steak or some chicken or some other kind of healthy animal protein source. This is very, very cheap kind of garbage can sort of protein source. And so I wouldn't really count that as anything healthy for you. And then you put that together with all that sugar, that's just kind of a recipe for disaster for your body. And then we have another one that kind of goes a different direction. This is Diet Coke. It says 0 sugar and 0 calories. And so what makes it sweet? And what makes it sweet is an artificial sweetener called aspartame. And again, I've had episodes in the past about aspartame. And aspartame breaks down to 50% phenylalanine. Phenylalanine is a substance that affects the body in a couple different ways. One of them is that you've heard of these neurotransmitters for the brain, like dopamine and serotonin. So they have building block kind of cofactors, building blocks to these neurotransmitters. And the building block for dopamine is tyrosine. The building block for serotonin is tryptophan. And tryptophan and tyrosine can't easily cross into the brain for production into these neurotransmitters. They have to jump on a taxi cab. And that taxi cab is called a large neutral amino acid transporter. So it's a taxi cab that takes these building blocks across into the brain to turn into neurotransmitters. So what does that have to do with aspartame? Well, what that has to do is aspartame breaks down to phenylalanine. Phenylalanine also jumps on that same taxi cab, that same transporter, and there's so many, sort of seats on the bus. And when phenylalanine floods the system after consuming a product that's high in aspartame like this one, then it kicks off tyrosine and tryptophan. So you could see how that can be a problem in that those are the building blocks to your body's natural production of these really, really important neurotransmitters. So you can see how aspartame can ultimately influence your neurology. It's affecting the neurotransmitters that your brain needs to function appropriately, which dictates things like mood and behavior and motivation and just kind of overall your sense of wellness and well-being. A product like this that has really high in aspartame could start to influence those things. And let's go on to the next one, which I think most kind of egregiously is trying to play on our instincts to think that we're making a really good choice, but we're not. And what I mean by that is this Rockstar Organic. And so this is trying to trick somebody like me who, tries to eat more organic, tries to choose more natural substances. And so I look at this and I go, oh, okay, cool. They finally came up with an energy drink for me. It's even USDA certified organic. Man, this must be super good for me. So I look at it. Carbonated water is the first ingredient. Cool. I'm okay with that. Organic cane sugar. That's just code word for sugar. Doesn't matter if it's organic or not. It is sugar. Straight up sugar. So let me go, okay, maybe there's not that much in there. It's organic. It's more, it's got a leaf on there. It's making you feel like it's more natural. So I look at it and goes, okay, 23 grams of sugar. Wow. That is a whopping dose of sugar. But guess what? You always have to look at servings per container. There's 2 servings in this one can. That means you have to double the amount of sugar. So that is 46 grams of sugar in every can of this organic drink. So again, that's a really, really high amount of sugar. There's no way that your liver can process that amount of sugar. Again, it's going to be turned very, very quickly into fat. If you want to get fatter, and increase your chance of diabetes, heart disease, all that stuff everybody's trying to avoid. These are the things that really put you on the fast track to obesity and heart disease. Because you know, a lot of people say, well, why could some countries like France, you know, they eat a lot of pasta and they eat a lot of bread, and, you know, why aren't they fat? Well, first of all, as they start to incorporate more, you know, Western kind of things and drinks that are high sugar, they are starting to increase the statistics of these chronic diseases. But if you still look at even the statistics today, the French consume like a third of the sugar and sweets that we consume. So even if you're having, you know, bread and other things, you know, people say the French paradox. It's a paradox that they're able to help to keep some of their cardiometabolic chronic conditions decreased more so than the US, even though they're drinking wine and they're eating more bread. But they have a fraction of the sugar that we have. And then a lot of people say, well, what about some of the Asian countries like Japan? They eat a lot of rice there. So they're getting a whole lot of carbohydrate and sugar through those foods. But they consume like a quarter of the sugar and sweets that we consume in the US. And this is the kind of stuff that really, really jacks up our per capita consumption of sugar, because it's concentrated in a very small little drink that we drink fast, and it converts into fat very, very quickly. So then we look at some other things on here. Anyhow, so just because a product manufacturer puts USDA organic on it does not mean that it's healthy. You know, 46 grams of sugar is enough to throw off your glucose metabolism, cause your liver to turn that sugar into fat, triglycerides, very, very quickly. Those triglycerides are going to be deposited probably first of all in your abdomen, and then it starts to reach out from there if you continue to consume these kind of products. So don't be thrown off by a company that puts that it's organic and puts a nice little leaf on there to make you think that it's all natural. It's not natural. It's extremely, extremely unnatural to consume that much sugar that quickly in a single product. It's one of these things that really has increased our statistics on obesity and diabetes. So really read the label, really make sure that you know what you're consuming, because it's these kind of concentrated sugars that really skew our per capita statistics in the US for these kind of sugars and sweeteners compared to many other countries. So hope that helps you understand how to read the labels. I'll bring you more information next time. We'll talk to you then. Keep it real.